Good morning. My name is Julia Sendor, and I'm thankful to be with all of you this morning. I'm here as the organizer with Orange County Justice United, which is a community power building organization. And I'm here to share about what that means and how it's connected to this congregation. I'm also here to invite you to reflect on this month's theme of possibilities, to open up your imagination to possibilities for making our community more loving and more just. And after the service at noon, I'll be staying on to facilitate an hour-long training on making change, and I hope you'll be able to join us. I'll also say this again, but I'm here to invite all of you as well to Justice United's Fall Assembly this coming Thursday via Zoom at 7 in the evening, and we'll be choosing the priorities for our next campaigns. There'll be more information about that coming from this congregation. So many of you might have heard of Justice United, some of you might not. But to give a quick background, we're made up of 20 member institutions across Orange County, including, of course, this congregation, UUCH. Some member groups are congregations, some are nonprofits, some are neighborhood-based groups, but all have shared values and a vision for social justice. And we are part of a national network of groups that organize to build power called the Industrial Areas Foundation, or IAF. And our whole purpose is to support community leaders and their institutions like this congregation to work together to make real change in the community. So to introduce both myself and Justice United more, I'd like to tell you a short story. It's about power, but it begins during a time when I felt very powerless. You may have had a similar experience. One evening 5 years ago, before I worked for or knew very much at all about Justice United, I stood in the living room of my friend's trailer. Both of our eyes were glued to the TV, where the Spanish language news station was blaring stories of increased immigration, enforcement, and deportations. And over the frantic tones of the news, my friend, who was undocumented, began quietly telling me about how she had just given up her dream. That dream had been to buy her own land and her own home. The trailer that she and her family rented had faulty electricity, sometimes the oven or fridge simply stopped working, and a roof that leaked and made the floor rot. But she and her husband had long dreamed of buying their own piece of land, building up or fixing their own home, and growing a huge garden to share produce with all their neighbors. I had just bought a house with my husband, and my friend and I were excited that she might soon do the same. She had spent months researching and meeting with banks that did provide loans to immigrants who were undocumented. And she and her husband had been collecting all the necessary paperwork, saving for a down payment, and going for weekend drives to look at potential land to buy. They were really excited. But that night she told me she had given up the dream. Why invest her savings when she might be forced to leave at any moment? Her children had been born in the U.S., and she told me how scared she was that at any time she left the house, she might end up getting taken away from her own children. Standing in her living room listening, I felt so angry that her dream was over and that she was afraid every single day of being separated from her children. I also felt so powerless. I could promise my friend that I would be there for her, that I could listen to her, but what could I actually do if something happened to her? All the individual efforts I'd made at calling and emailing representatives and people who had some ability to change the situation felt so ineffective. What would it take for people like me and my friend to actually make a change? I didn't know. And I didn't know that at the same time, Justice United was actively responding to those same threats that my friend felt by organizing for change, organizing to shut down predatory traffic stops, organizing 600 residents to get the district attorney to agree to eliminate fines for people who are driving without a license, adding so much protection for undocumented residents. Now, I finally learned about Justice United a year and a half later when I got to see another win for myself, when some members of the community garden, when I worked at the time, invited me to a school board candidates forum at Latticeville Grove Missionary Baptist Church up in Hurdle Mills. When I got there, I saw 400 Justice United members packing the church, a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multilingual crowd representing groups from all across Orange County. And I watched as the school board candidates promised that if elected, they would commit to hiring bilingual staff and more teachers of color so that the teachers more fully represented the students. And as I heard the candidates make their promises, and I looked out on the sea of hundreds of people, all united in their passion for justice, and all ready to hold these candidates accountable, it gave me the chills. This, I realized, was real change. But how does it happen? Well, now that I work with Justice United, I've learned about Justice United's philosophy for organizing for change. I'm going to describe it a little bit here. It begins by recognizing that as humans, we exist in two different worlds and in the tension between those worlds, the world as it is and the world as it should be. Now, the world as it should be is the world of our values. It's the world of the Unitarian Universalist principles, from the inherent worth and dignity of every human, to compassion in all relations, to acceptance. And we get to see it in little glimpses on earth. In this world as it should be, people like my friend could use her skills and her talents easily in creating a beautiful, safe home with a thriving veggie garden, no fear of being separated from her children. That wouldn't even cross her mind. In this world, love is the driving force. It's what makes everything happen. But we mostly live in the world as it is. This is our daily reality, the world as it is. This is the world where people like my friend live in fear of deportation, where they feel like investing in a home is not a dream worth pursuing. In this world, power is what drives everything. And so when we organize, as we try to move the world as it is closer to the world as it should be, we need power, because power is what makes things happen in the world as it is. And power is simply the ability to act. It can be used for good or for bad. And it comes in two forms: organized people and organized money. And every organization or institution or person who has power has it from organizing people and money. Now, sometimes people have trouble with this part of our organizing philosophy because, in fact, many of us have negative associations with power. My friend and I had negative associations with power that immigration enforcement officials might have in separating her family. We've often seen power used against us and against people we love. And too often we've been forced to do something we don't want to do by people who are more powerful than us. This is one type of power called dominant power, or power over, when one person or a group has power over other people or a group. But with Justice United, with this way of organizing for change, we seek to create another kind of power altogether, relational power. And this type of power doesn't oppress anyone. With this power, people reflect on what matters to them and choose to act together around common values and common interests. The more that people work together, the more power they all share with each other. This is power with. And we build this relational power by forming relationships to get to know each other's stories and motivations. Then we connect people in larger groups to listen to each other's experiences and begin to identify common themes and common challenges. We decide where we want to focus, what we want to focus on changing, whether it's ending fines for undocumented drivers to equitable teacher hiring. And we research and we plan campaigns based on who has the ability to make the changes we seek and how to move them to make that change. And this is really important. Throughout the process, we center the voices of the people who are directly affected so that they can be the ones who determine what kinds of changes we need to see and what would make a difference for their lives. And we'll be talking more about this process during the training after this service. We work through groups in the community. We call ourselves broad-based organizers because we're formed by a broad, diverse base of member institutions that represent different parts of the whole community. And all of these groups, like this congregation, together create a structure for people to connect with each other, to learn and grow, and to work with the other groups, all to form a powerful collective force for change. And so when we can come together across these diverse groups, we can build powerful organizations, beginning with relationships and listening, and ending up as a force that can truly negotiate for the changes that we want to see in this world. As a single person, as a woman and her friend standing in the living room watching the TV with fear, and even as a single group, we don't have much ability to change anything significantly. But we have seen that when we can come together around a common interest, we can make extremely effective change that we can actually see and feel in our own lives. And this work, in many ways, is a way of honoring and living out the Unitarian Universalist principles. It begins with this deep, deep belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. All our organizing is based in the belief that people can and should have the ability to craft solutions to their own problems, and especially that people most affected by the problems have the ability and the right to determine the destiny of their own communities. And we act from this deep belief in interconnectedness and interdependency, even when one of us might not be directly affected by this problem, because we believe that we are all connected and all deeply interdependent on each other. It's important for everyone to work together to make this change. And it also comes from our belief in democracy, that it's vital to build power so that people truly have the ability to participate and shape their own community, not just making a nominal phone call or a person-by-person voicing of a problem, but really, really an ability to make change. And so I want to go back to this theme of possibilities, because with Justice United, we're now at a season of envisioning what kinds of changes we want to make in our community. We've been struggling for over a year and a half with so many different forms of challenges that COVID has presented. We also have a lot of opportunities on the horizon in this county for ways that we can make a difference. And so I invite you to imagine, what kinds of changes would you love to see in our community? What kinds of relationships would you love to create or strengthen, both within this congregation and across our community? How would it feel to work with other people in groups who share your values, to really see those changes come to life? I think possibility is such a wonderful theme because it means actually believing that the world as it should be is a world worth trying to create, that it is possible to make a difference. And this congregation has already been such an essential part of turning possibilities into reality. So I invite you to continue visioning and learning and coming together to keep turning the world as it is into the world as it should be, which is a world driven by love. Thank you.